All right, so you wanted to deep dive into this interview from military historian with Omar. And wow, what a story.
Yeah, a powerful one for sure. And I think, it really hits home the human cost of war.
Definitely. I mean, it goes way beyond the headlines and statistics and really shows what it's like for the families who are, caught in the middle of all this.
Yeah, the ones who are actually living through it, right?
Exactly. And so Omar's story starts in Iraq back in 2005. And to kind of set the scene for everyone, this is during the insurgency. So you've got these groups, they're actively fighting against the government, and there's a lot of violence and fear everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just some historical background or anything. This is Omar's everyday life.
Right. And it's interesting because his family is actually known for being very welcoming, even to U.S. forces, which was pretty dangerous at the time.
It was.
Yeah.
His father in particular, yeah, he seems to have really believed in helping out where he could, and it didn't really matter how dangerous it was.
Right. He was even like actively trying to find out about potential threats and then sharing that information with the soldiers.
Yeah, it really speaks to his character wanting to protect, uh, you know, people who he thought were trying to help his country. But it also shows you just how complicated things were.
Yeah, how Iraqis were caught between all these different sides and had to make some really difficult choices.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really shows that things weren't black and white over there.
Nope, not at all.
But tragically, this desire to help ends up costing Omar's family dearly. One day, Omar and his dad are driving to Samara. They're just going shopping, something totally normal, and they get ambushed.
Oh, wow. I mean, just picture this. You're a teenager, you're driving with your dad, and all of a sudden another car pulls up and armed men jump out and they just start shooting. Yeah. And then Omar's not just watching this happen, he's right there in the middle of it. He even fires back with an AK-47.
Yeah, that's something I can't even imagine.
Me neither.
But what really stuck with me is that even as his father's dying, his last words to Omar are, "Take care of your family."
Those words are so powerful, right? I mean, it really shows how much responsibility he felt for his family, even in those final moments.
Mm.
And it almost foreshadows what Omar is going to have to do.
Right. It's heartbreaking because Omar's mother is initially told that both her husband and son are dead. And I can only imagine how devastating that must have been.
Yeah, to get that news and then find out it's not true.
Right. And the tragedy doesn't end there. Omar actually finds out later that there's a bounty on his head
Oh, wow.
because he witnessed the attack and he could identify his father's killers. So now he's a target for the very people who, took his father from him.
That's a lot for anyone to handle, let alone a teenager.
Yeah, on top of dealing with losing his father, he's also suddenly in constant danger. And this is really where we start to see how resilient Omar is, how he's able to cope with all this, beyond what anyone should have to face. He has to grow up fast and basically become the protector and provider for his family when he's only 14 years old.
Yeah, and from what he says in the interview, it sounds like he was already starting to step into that protector role even before his father died.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he talks about how he would try to protect his siblings, sometimes even from their father's discipline.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
It is, and I wonder if those experiences maybe in some way help prepare him for what he would have to face later on.
Yeah, maybe. But it's clear he's not just taking this lying down. He's really trying to create a better future for himself and his family, and he talks about working to provide for them.
And that right there is resilience.
Yeah.
He isn't just surviving. He's actually trying to build something better for his family out of this really, really tough situation.
Absolutely. And he's not alone in all of this. He forms some very unexpected bonds that really help him get through these difficult times.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Those bonds end up becoming incredibly important.
And those are with Shane Becker and Grant Will, the two U.S. soldiers, right? They actually end up becoming like family to Omar and his siblings.
Yeah, their first meeting is kind of funny, actually. Shane ends up helping Omar's father fix his car using duct tape.
Duct tape? Seriously?
I know, right? But, I mean, I guess that's just what you do when you're in a war zone. You improvise.
Yeah, for sure. But, it's also a great example of how these unexpected connections can happen in the middle of all that chaos.
Absolutely. It shows that even in the most unlikely places, people can still find ways to connect with each other and help each other out.
And for Omar and his family, that act of kindness with the duct tape grows into something much bigger.
It really does. Those soldiers, they start offering them a sense of security and protection, which is so important when you're living in such a dangerous place.
Right, and they become like a source of strength and stability for them during a time when everything feels really unstable.
And it's really clear just how much those soldiers meant to them. Because Omar's younger sister is actually named after April, one of the U.S. Army nurses who was helping their family.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. It shows that these soldiers were more than just protectors. They were truly like family to them.
Yeah, it's a really powerful example of how strong bonds can form, even across different cultures and nationalities.
It makes you wonder, what would have happened to Omar and his family if they hadn't met those soldiers?
Yeah, what their lives would have been like without that support.
Exactly. But before we get into that, let's talk about the bigger picture for a minute. We've mentioned the insurgency, but we really need to dive into what life was actually like living in a war zone and how dangerous it was for Omar and his family.
You're right, the ambush wasn't a one-time thing. Omar describes seeing some really horrific things even when he was younger. It's hard to imagine the impact that must have had on him.
Definitely. I mean, he talks about seeing beheadings and torture, and those are images that probably stay with you forever, especially at such a young age.
It's unimaginable. And it wasn't just things he saw happening to other people. He and his family were directly targeted, too.
Yeah, and a lot more than just that one ambush,
Yeah.
right? Like we talks about this one time when his parents were at the hospital,
Oh,
and
yeah, when their house was attacked.
yeah, and Omar and his little brother had to defend themselves.
Wow. I mean, you can't imagine being a kid and having to deal with something like that.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It just shows that war affects everyone, even kids who are the most vulnerable.
It does.
And I mean, it wasn't just that one time either. Omar says that the threat was basically constant.
Like always there in the background.
Yeah, like there was this one time when he and his siblings and his father were driving and someone shot at them while the kids were in the car.
Oh, gosh.
And then, there were mortar attacks and roadside bombs, it sounds like. They were just constantly living with this feeling of danger.
Yeah, you're not just worried about getting shot. You're dealing with this whole psychological thing too, this fear that never goes away. How do you even deal with that as a kid?
I don't know. I
Right.
can't even imagine. But Omar's story really makes you think about what kids in these war zones have to go through.
It does.
And it makes you realize that the effects of war, they don't just disappear when the fighting stops. The trauma can last for a really long time.
It's a good reminder that the scars of war run deep.
Yeah, for sure. But even with all this darkness in Omar's story, there are still these glimmers of hope.
Those moments where you see his strength.
Right, like he could have easily just given up, become bitter and angry, but he didn't.
He kept going.
He did, and he focused on the good things in his life, like the people who were there for him.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to his escape from Iraq with the help of those soldiers, the ones who became like family.
Right. It sounds like it was a pretty dangerous escape, too.
But thankfully, they all made it to safety in America. And now Omar's living what he calls the American dream.
Hmm?
What do you think that means to him, considering everything he's been through?
That's a good question. I think for a lot of people, the American dream is all about, material success and climbing the social ladder. But for Omar, I think it's something much deeper.
I think so too.
Like for him, it's probably more about just being safe and having the opportunity to build a future where he doesn't have to worry about violence all the time.
Exactly. It's about being able to raise his own family in a place where they don't have to be afraid of bombs and people trying to kill them because of their beliefs.
Right. It's like he's taking the American dream back to its core, like
Yeah.
stripping away all the superficial stuff and getting to what really matters, peace
Yeah.
and stability.
Yeah, exactly. And it really makes you appreciate those things, the things that we often take for granted.
It does. It's like a reminder that freedom is not just some idea. It's something you have to fight for, something that people like Omar and his family had to risk everything for.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that when he comes to America, he doesn't try to hide his Iraqi identity.
Right. He doesn't try to fit in by pretending to be someone he's not.
He embraces both his heritage and his new life in America.
Yeah.
He even jokes about how his friends call him the Iraqi redneck.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
It is, right? It shows how he's able to blend cultures, to find humor in unexpected places.
Yeah, he clearly loves things like hunting and fishing. Those are things he's embraced as part of his American life. But he also hasn't forgotten his roots.
Yeah, he still holds on to his Iraqi traditions and culture. It's really a testament to his ability to adapt and thrive in a new environment without losing who he is.
I mean, his story shows that you can be a mix of different things. You don't have to choose just one part of yourself.
It can be both.
Yeah, and I think that's reflected in his overall outlook on life, too. Even after everything he's been through, he seems so positive and resilient.
It's amazing, right? He doesn't seem bitter or resentful at all.
Not even a little bit.
Instead, he's thankful for the opportunities he's been given, and he's determined to make the most of them.
He even talks about wanting to join the U.S. military.
Yeah, to give back to the country that gave him and his family refuge.
That is incredible. It really speaks to his character, wanting to serve and protect the place that took him in. It makes you think about how one small act of kindness, like Shane fixing that car with duct tape, can have such a huge impact on someone's life.
It really is remarkable. It's a reminder that even the little things we do can make a big difference.
Yeah, and it shows how important it is to connect with people, even those who are different from us.
To build bridges instead of walls.
Yeah, because sometimes those connections can lead to acts of incredible courage and selflessness, like Omar's father risking his own life to help U.S. forces.
It makes you wonder, what motivated him to take those risks? Was it just duty? Or was it something more like a personal connection with the people he was helping?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it shows you how complex human motivation is, even in war. And it's those personal connections, those individual stories, that help us understand the true cost of what war really means. Because Omar's story is a reminder that behind every headline, every statistic, there are people whose lives are being torn apart.
It reminds us that these aren't just numbers, they're real people.
Right, and Omar's story is a call for us to try to understand what they're going through, to have empathy for them.
To remember that we're all human no matter where we come from or what we believe.
Exactly. And even in the middle of all this conflict, there's still hope, there's still resilience, and there's still the chance to find connection and meaning.
Omar's story is a perfect example of that. Yeah, and it's really inspiring to see how he's taken all of that and turned it into something positive.
Yeah, it makes you think about how that positivity kind of ripples outward. Even though Omar's father is gone, his spirit is still there.
You can really feel it.
Yeah, in his family and in the soldiers he befriended and all people he touched with his kindness. It's a testament to how powerful human connection can be.
Right, how even small acts of generosity can have a lasting impact.
Absolutely. Omar's father's story is a great reminder that even in the midst of conflict, there's still room for humanity, for compassion, for love.
Yeah, it's like his smile becomes the symbol of hope, a reminder that even when things are really dark, you can still choose to find joy and make a positive impact on the world.
I think that's a message that we all need to hear, especially when we're bombarded with stories of war and conflict. It's easy to get caught up in all the violence and division. But Omar's story reminds us that even in those situations, human decency can still win out.
Yeah, it makes you think about how we choose to respond to the challenges in our own lives. Do we let anger and bitterness take over? Or do we find a way to rise above it, to find meaning and purpose even when things are tough?
Omar's story is definitely an example of choosing the second path.
Yeah, he could have easily let the trauma consume him.
Right.
But he chose to be resilient. He chose to focus on building a better future for himself and his family.
And I think that's a really powerful message for all of us.
It is. It shows that we always have a choice in how we respond to difficult situations. And that even when things seem impossible, there's always hope.
There's always a way forward.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, that way forward involves connecting with other people, building bridges instead of walls.
Like the bonds Omar formed with those soldiers.
Yeah, I mean, they came from totally different worlds.
Different cultures, different backgrounds.
And yet they found common ground.
In their shared humanity, in their desire to help each other.
Right. And those connections, those acts of kindness,
Yeah.
they can be real lifelines in a time of crisis.
They remind us that we're not alone.
That even when things are at their darkest, there are still people who care, people who want to help.
And sometimes those connections can even lead to these amazing acts of courage and selflessness, like Omar's father risking his life to help the U.S. forces.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what was it that drove him to do that? Was it just a sense of duty? Or was there something deeper there, like a personal loyalty to the people he had become friends with?
I think that's a question worth thinking about.
Yeah, and it reminds us that even in war, people's motivations are complicated. It's not always black and white.
And it's those personal stories, those individual perspectives that really help us understand the true impact of war.
Yeah, because Omar's story shows us that behind all the headlines, all the statistics, There are real people who are hurting.
Who are trying to make sense of the chaos and violence.
And it's a reminder that we need to have empathy for those people to try to understand what they're going through.
To remember that we're all connected, no matter where we come from or what we believe.
Absolutely. Omar's story is a powerful reminder that even in the midst of conflict, there's always the possibility for hope and resilience and connection.
It's a story that I think we'll all be thinking about for a long time.
Me too. It's been a real privilege to dive into this with you.
And to all of you listening, thanks for sharing this interview with us. It's clear that Omar's story touched a lot of you, and we hope that this deep dive has given you some new insights and maybe even challenged you to think about things in a different way.
Because history isn't just dates and facts, it's about the lives of real people.
And sometimes it's those individual stories that have the power to change the world.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the stories that matter.
We'll see you next time.
Welcome to the Military Historian Podcast. I'm Lloyd Shellenberger. I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in. Hi, this is the Military Historian Channel, and I'm Lloyd Shellenberger, your host. We have a really exciting guest today as part of the Left Behind series. His name is Omar Al-Abase. He has a story I think every American should listen to. It is perhaps one of the most moving stories I've ever heard, and I'm not going to waste any more time. I want to get right to him. Hi, Omar. How are you doing today?
Oh, wonderful today. Trying to enjoy the weather's being nice. And
Yeah, we're
everything
in Minneapolis right now.
Yeah, we sure are.
But you know that that's where you live in that area, so it's to you it's no big deal.
Yeah, no, enjoy it. I love Minnesotan. I'm a Minnesotan 100%. I would say I love the outdoors, love the lakes, love
Yeah, you are
being
an
a
outdoor
Minnesota
person, aren't you?
Vikings fan too. So yeah.
Oh yeah, well I purposely didn't wear my Green Bay today just because of that.
That's a good thing. You don't want to see me get
Yeah,
angry.
I don't want to mess with you. No, we're not going to do that. Explain to me what exactly happened to you and your family in Iraq, and our connection, and Grant Wills and Shane Becker's connection to you. What happened first of all in Iraq in 2004, in 2005?
Well, it's a lot that happened in 2005. My dad got killed by a terrorist group, and we had to flee the country for our safety. And for me, there was a bounty on my head through the terrorist group because I know who killed my dad. And luckily, I don't know to this day how I survived because I was with him when he got killed. But luckily, amazing military group that Shane and Grant were part of, and Shane was Dad's best friend and was able to support us and get us out of the country as fast as they can, and getting over to the green zone, which you come in and were there with us.
Pomeroy.
Yep. Earl Pomeroy and everybody else, but you were there with Sauce, met us, and were able to get us to the airport safely. You know, that was learning since we were
yes. That was not a fun day.
No, that was a very traumatic day for my mom and I. I mean,
They refused to give up even on your way out, which I did not believe.
I like I said, it is crazy to think about. How am I still alive? How am I still doing what I'm doing? And I think there's like we talked about earlier, there's a higher power. I'm meant to be here, meant to serve my duties, meant to be, have a wife, have kids, and have the life that I have, which I call it. People look at me and they're like, okay. I said, I'm living the American dream right now. And because what happened in 2005, meeting you, having Shane and Grant do whatever they can in their power to get us here, and they did that. And I'm thankful for that.
We're thankful for you being here. This is a part that's kind of hard, but I'm going to ask you to walk through that day that your father was killed. Walk through that from the beginning of leaving the house to what happened. I don't think people fully understand just how brutal the insurgency was.
So that day, like I said, it was a very traumatic day, and I don't wish it on anybody else to experience it. And like I said, to this day, it's still feels like it's a bad dream. And you're trying to think about it, and you're like, no, you were there for it. You witnessed this. You did this, and I don't know how I'm not traumatized or how I'm not have these things mess up my brain. But like I said, due to whatever it is, higher power or the people around me that help me work it out the best way I can and make me feel like I'm welcome. So that day, start to it, Dad and I said, hey, he said, hey, come with me. We're gonna go shopping and go for a drive. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do that. So we hopped in the car. We went and picked up groceries, and he's like, hey, do you wanna go to somewhere? And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. So we're driving on the highway, and 20-mile down the click, there was road bomb, I'd say. So they had the road blocked, whatever. So we're like, oh, we'll just take this frontage road, head to Samara. It's a little bit of a shortcut too. And we're driving for 5-10 minutes, and before that, we noticed that there was a car following us, but they ended up passing us. As we turned, they passed us, and like, okay, like nothing to do with it, whatever. There was no speed limits back home.
And your dad was very aware of his surroundings because
He
he
is.
had multiple assassination attempts at that point.
He was, and so my dad carries a 1911 pistol.
Oh.
Yeah. He gives the AK to me. I had to learn how to use guns at a very young age.
Yeah, I hear that.
And he gave the AK to me, so we always have the AK loaded, fully loaded, action open, just in case something decided to happen. And so we were driving on this road down to Samara, and two people came out of this car that passed us, and they start shooting. I pull the AK out, start shooting at them, and my dad kind of pulled me down, shoved me down by his feet, and took the AK from me and started shooting at them. To this day, because I had my head kind of kinked back looking at him by his feet, and I can see every single bullet that struck my dad in the vehicle. And I can imagine the blood that was spraying on me from him.
How many times was he hit?
He was hit about 26 times when we took him to the hospital, and that's they told us. And he
He was already dead at that point, correct?
no,
He was still alive?
he was still alive. I can remember to the day because they stopped shooting for a few seconds, and Dad was. And I don't tell this to anybody, but my dad looked at me and he's like, "Take care of your family." And I still get goosebumps from it now. I don't
knew.
tell it.
He knew.
I still, every time I say that, and I've only said it to one person, was my wife. And he looked down at me and he says, "Take care of the family."
And then he fell over top of you to cover you, didn't he?
His leg was, so the blood, he got shot in the thigh and the blood sprayed on my face. And they pulled him out of the car and shot him in the head right in front of me. I don't know how I'm alive to this day. I don't know. They could have easily shot me there. I know I was frozen. And so they pulled out, did their, shot him in the head and shot him a couple more times. And I knew exactly who did it because my eyes were wide open, but I don't know if they thought I was dead.
Were you looking out at the...
I was looking at Dad like this as he was sitting in the driver's seat, was in the passenger seat. It's a single cab Silverado.
Wow.
Looking at him, and they pulled him out of the car, dragged him out, shot him in the head, and because of all the blood on me, they thought I was dead. The reason I say that because after the whole fact, there was a bounty on me because I saw who killed my dad.
It was at 18,000, if I remember correctly, right?
Correct. Yep. So that's kind of the whole continue of the story. And then I got out of the car as they left. Was able to move. And
You knew he was dead when you looked at him.
imagine a little kid, your dad has fallen down,
Yeah.
and you don't know that he's dead or not.
Okay.
Because as you're a little kid, you don't just trying to wake him up.
That concept doesn't get to you yet.
I'm trying to wake him up, trying to move him, and to this day I can hear the air escaping out of his body. And what it sounds, it's so hard to explain.
The last breaths he knew he was taking.
I hear it as I talk about it. I imagine it. It's the type of breath that it's like a humming, deep humming noise, like like you can hear it.
Agonal breathing?
I can feel it
Yes.
because my face was right next to his, and trying to shake him and move him. And so that happened. I was with him sitting next to him. Another patrol unit, a U.S. military patrol unit, heard the shooting. They came to investigate and saw me and my dad. And one of the soldiers pulled me out. He was a translator. Pulled me out and was trying to get me to look away. And I kept talking to him, like, wake up my dad. Like, get him awake. I want my dad.
He's not
Like,
dead yet.
yeah, because as a kid, that didn't get registered in your mind. Like, yes, my dad had been shot before in the past, long time ago. So it's not registering in my mind that, hey, your dad is gone.
Right.
To that day, they tell me that he's gone. Like he's gone. He's dead. He's no longer with us.
Mhm.
And still shocked. Still doesn't process. And so the Iraqi soldiers military group, which was very close to my family, they're kind of my dad and my mom are very welcoming people.
Right.
They accepted whoever they want to the family.
Mm-hmm.
So they grabbed those Iraqi guys. They knew me because they were stopped at our house before. So they had to take my dad to the hospital to get processed throughout the whole thing, and they're like, come with us. So I sat with them in their pickup, and they loaded my dad in the back of the pickup, and we drove from Samara to Tikrit, which you might have exact time of how long that is.
I don't know, but
It was probably like
it
40.
estimated about 2 hours, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Give or take on that. Yeah. And to that day, I had to sit like a little kid, a 13, 14-year-old, on the chair on the back, holding the back seat, looking in the truck of the bed, seeing my dad
Hoping
laying
he
there,
would sit up and everything be okay.
hoping that he would move.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Nope, did not happen. And everything that goes to my mind as that happened is my siblings okay? Because if they said my dad is dead, they're coming after my family.
Yes.
What do I need to do? What can I do?
To protect him.
Yes, and it was very hard. So the first day they told my mom I was dead with my dad. So my mom didn't know that I was alive for.
Why did they do that?
They didn't know. On the radios they said Majid and his son are dead.
Wow.
And so mom and my siblings thought I was dead.
And you're close to your mom.
Very. My mom and I are. There's nothing in the world that could separate us. I would give my life to my mom if I can. My mom is heaven for me. If anything happens to my mom, I would be lost without her.
She's a brave woman.
She is. She's amazing. She's she, if it wasn't for her, I won't be who I am today. She's an amazing person. Her and I, you know, so continue to that with mom. So we get to 10th grade, and they told us, like, we dropped out at the hospital. They processed him, and the soldiers took me back to my mom. And that night, I got to see mom. I mean, she was crying. She didn't know, like, I was alive, like, and there's more stories of my siblings telling you how that process goes, because I wasn't there for her.
Right.
But yeah, no, she was. Her and I, when I got back, her and I just kind of late at night, and that night was a very bad night because Shane and his group were fighting back, or I don't know if it's a different infantry. I can't remember that night.
I think it's 124th up there.
Yeah, they were fighting back against terrorists that was trying to come to our house that night. But mom and I sat together. We said, "Your dad's gone, and from now on, we need to take care of the family. You and I. Nothing gonna stop us in the whole world."
Wow.
And it's been my mission.
Yeah.
To support, to work, to do whatever I can for my siblings, and there's nothing in the world that I can't do for them. Whatever they needed, I'm there. Whatever they wanted a car, I'm the one who bought them a car, even though I didn't have a car. They wanted a phone, you can have my phone. They wanted this. To them, I became a dad, and the youngest was calling me dad for the longest time.
Would it be safe to say that after your father died, you no longer were a son more than a father at that point now?
That's very well said. I mean, that's how you could say it, because I was working to provide for my family since my dad died. I still am, in a ways. Not saying that they now give them money or anything. They can provide for themselves, and my siblings are very well smart, very well talented, very hardworking.
But you were a leader. I saw that the night I met you guys. Your relationship changed with your siblings that night, and from that point on, because you had to take on a different role, right?
Right. It has changed. My siblings and I relationship has been different throughout our life. Even when Dad was around. I was, as the oldest back home, you tended to be, if Dad's gone, you're in charge. And that's how I grew up. And to think about it, there is a lot of pressure on that person to make sure family's safe, to make sure the family has food, to make sure everybody has food.
Right.
And that's why I end up working with Dad and trying to provide for the family. That's how I'm raised. That's what I need to do, and I grew up working with Dad. I never went to school as much as I'd like to, because Dad always needed help to provide for the family, and I was there. And my relationship with my, back home we have different ways to discipline kids. And when Dad would discipline the youngest ones, I would step in and push Dad. It's my fault, it's not theirs. So as we grow up, my siblings and I always have that bonding relationship since they were youngest.
You're their father, protector, a whole other list of things.
Yeah. I'm very proud of my siblings. There's beyond words how proud I am, each and one of them, and what they overcome and what they're currently seeing them grow.
What are their names? Tell me all their names.
Youngest one, we call her April, and she's named after one of the soldier
attending nurses, yes.
Attending nurses. And earlier a question was asked to me, what made you feel like these soldiers are part of your family? Like, as we were walking around talking to different guys, and I said, the first thing that I felt like comfortable with them, when they got over to our house, they weren't on their guns. They weren't on patrol. They had their armor down. They had their guns put aside.